Maya was a young woman who lived in a quiet village with her relatives. She was kind, hardworking, and always tried to keep peace in the family. But her relatives were jealous of her. They wanted her share of the family property and money. Maya refused to give up her rights, and because of this, her relatives began to hate her even more. One dark night, when the village was silent, Maya's relatives planned a cruel act. They trapped her inside the house. She cried for help, but nobody came. Her own family turned against her. They beat her, and in their greed and anger, they killed her. The sound of her last scream faded into the night. To hide their crime, they buried Maya's body in secret. The villagers were told she had run away. Nobody questioned the story. The family continued with their lives, pretending nothing had happened. But they did not know that the soul of the innocent never rests when it is taken by betrayal. Years passed, but the house where Maya was killed never felt the same. Strange coldness filled the rooms. At night, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallways. Sometimes a faint smell of Maya's perfume spread in the air, even though she was gone. The relatives ignored these signs at first, but the presence only grew stronger. Maya's spirit had returned. Her soul could not forgive those who betrayed her. She entered the same house where she was killed, waiting for the right time to reveal herself. The house, once filled with laughter and family gatherings, now carried an unseen fear. Shadows moved where no one stood, and whispers of her name floated in the silence. The relatives thought they had buried Maya, but what they did not know was that they had buried only her body. Her spirit had never left. Many years had passed since Maya's death, and the family believed the secret was safe. No one in the village suspected them. They lived in the same house, ate together, and celebrated festivals as if nothing had happened. But deep inside the walls of that house, something had awakened. It started slowly. At night, the doors creaked open by themselves. The windows banged loudly even when there was no wind. The family thought it was just old wood making noise, but the sounds grew stranger each day. Sometimes, they heard the sound of anklets walking across the floor, the same anklets Maya used to wear. One evening, the eldest relative entered the kitchen and felt a cold breeze brush past her face. She turned, but no one was there. A clay pot fell from the shelf and shattered on its own. The family grew nervous, but they avoided talking about it. They were afraid to mention Maya's name, as if speaking it would bring her back. Soon, nights became terrifying. The lights flickered as if controlled by unseen hands. The sound of someone breathing filled the bedrooms, even when everyone was awake and silent. Children in the family refused to sleep alone, saying they saw a woman standing in the corner of the room. The relatives tried to calm themselves, thinking it was only their imagination. But deep inside, they knew what was happening. The soul of Maya was restless, and she had returned to the house where her life was stolen. The air in the house became heavier, and a feeling of fear settled inside everyone's heart. Nobody dared to walk alone after sunset. The family that once laughed together now sat in silence at night, listening to the whispers of a spirit they had once betrayed. The curse had begun, and there was no escape. The nights inside the house grew darker and heavier. The family members often woke up covered in sweat, feeling as if someone was standing near their beds, silently watching them. Fear had already taken root, but soon, the first clear sign of Maya's spirit appeared. One night, the youngest child of the family, little Ian, woke up to drink water. As he walked through the hallway, he froze. At the far end of the corridor, under the dim light of a flickering lantern, he saw a pale woman standing still. Her long hair covered part of her face, and her white dress looked torn and dirty. Ian's heart raced. He knew it was not any member of his family. When the woman lifted her head, her eyes glowed faintly, filled with sadness and pain. Ian dropped his cup, and it broke into pieces on the floor. At that sound, the woman vanished, but the faint smell of perfume remained in the air, the same perfume Maya used to wear years ago. Ian ran back to his room, screaming. His parents rushed to him, but when he explained what he saw, they scolded him, saying it was just a dream. Yet deep inside, they knew the boy had seen the truth. After that night, more strange incidents followed. The family often heard the sound of Maya's anklets at midnight, walking from one room to another. Sometimes they saw her shadow moving across the walls, even though no one was there. The mirrors in the house began to fog up suddenly, and when wiped, faint fingerprints remained. Fear spread among the family, but they tried to stay quiet. They were terrified that Maya's name would rise again, and the truth of her death would come out. But it was already too late. The first signs of her spirit were clear. Maya had returned, and she was not leaving. The quiet signs soon turned into open warnings. Maya's spirit was no longer hiding in the shadows. She wanted her killers to know she was there. Her anger filled every corner of the house. At night, the family began to hear her voice calling their names. Sometimes it was a soft whisper near the ear, and sometimes it was a loud cry echoing through the walls. The relatives would wake up trembling, afraid to step outside their rooms. One evening, the eldest son of the family looked into the mirror to comb his hair. Suddenly, Maya's reflection appeared behind him, her face pale and eyes red with fury. When he turned, no one was there, but the mirror cracked loudly as if struck by an invisible hand. The youngest daughter often woke up screaming. She told her parents that a woman sat on the edge of her bed every night, brushing her hair gently. When the child looked closely, she saw Maya's lifeless eyes staring back at her. The spirit's anger also reached the walls of the house. Pictures fell from their frames, furniture moved on its own, and plates smashed without anyone touching them. The family grew restless, unable to sleep, eat, or live in peace. Maya wanted them to remember what they had done. In their dreams, they began to relive the night of her death. They saw themselves standing over her body, their hands covered in blood. Each dream ended with Maya rising from the floor, pointing at them with rage. No matter how hard they prayed or tried to ignore it, the spirit's anger grew stronger. The air in the house smelled of burning incense mixed with rot. Every sound, every shadow, every whisper carried her fury. The message was clear: Maya's forgiveness would never come. She had returned not to be silent, but to make them suffer. The warning soon turned into punishment. Maya's spirit had given enough signs, and now she was ready to make the guilty pay for what they did. The first to suffer was the eldest woman of the house, who had planned Maya's killing years ago. She woke up one night, unable to breathe. It felt as if invisible hands were pressing on her chest. She screamed, but when her family rushed to her room, they saw deep red finger marks across her neck. No one was there, but the smell of Maya's perfume filled the room. The second punishment came to one of the men who had buried Maya's body. Every time he looked into the mirror, Maya's face appeared behind him, blood running down her forehead. His hair turned white from fear within days. He stopped sleeping, terrified that if he closed his eyes, Maya would drag him into her world. Another relative began to hear whispers all the time, even in daylight. The whispers grew louder until they became screams. He covered his ears, but the sound never stopped. Finally, he broke down, begging for forgiveness in front of the family. The children of the house were not harmed, but they suffered in fear. Every night, they saw Maya standing in the corners, silently watching. They cried to leave the house, but their parents refused. Shame and pride kept the family trapped in the very place that was cursed. Objects began to fly in the air, windows shattered, and doors locked on their own. The relatives realized they could no longer escape her wrath. Each day brought new suffering, sickness, nightmares, and terror. Maya was not just haunting them anymore. She was punishing them one by one, making them live with the fear she had felt on the night they killed her. And this was only the beginning. The house that was once filled with life slowly turned into a place of terror. Nobody from the village wanted to visit anymore. People whispered that the family's home was cursed, and strange shadows were often seen moving through its windows at night. Inside, the relatives lived like prisoners. They no longer laughed, no longer shared meals, and barely spoke to one another. Every room carried an unseen weight, as if the air itself was alive with Maya's presence. At night, the house shook as though an earthquake was passing through. Plates smashed on the floor, cupboards opened and slammed shut, and the walls groaned as if in pain. The family gathered in one room, huddled together, but the torment only grew worse. They heard footsteps circling them, whispers calling their names, and the sound of anklets dancing around them in the dark. They brought priests and spiritual healers into the house. Rituals were performed, holy water was sprinkled, and prayers were shouted. But Maya's spirit grew even stronger, mocking their efforts. Candles blew out on their own, and the fire used for rituals turned black with thick smoke. The priests left quickly, refusing to return. The family tried to escape, but whenever they packed their bags, something terrible happened. Doors would not open, locks would twist and jam, and storms appeared suddenly, trapping them inside. It was as if the house itself had become Maya's weapon, holding her killers in place so they could not run from her vengeance. The children cried constantly, unable to sleep, while the adults grew weaker from fear and sleepless nights. Every shadow on the wall looked like Maya's figure. Every reflection in the glass carried her face. The house had become a prison of nightmares, and the family knew the truth. Maya would never let them go. The family was broken. Sleepless nights, endless fear, and Maya's presence had taken away every bit of peace from their lives. But Maya's spirit was not done. She wanted her final revenge. It started with the man who had struck the first blow on her the night she died. One stormy evening, he disappeared. His screams echoed through the halls, and when the family searched, they found his shoes in the corridor, but no trace of him. Only a trail of wet footprints led to Maya's old room, where the floor was ice cold. One by one, the guilty relatives began to vanish. Sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes in broad daylight. A woman was pulled into a dark corner by unseen hands. Another was dragged into a locked room, her cries fading as the door slammed shut on its own. No one ever returned. The few who were left alive tried to run away, but the house refused to release them. Windows turned into walls, doors opened to nothing but darkness, and the very ground seemed to shift beneath their feet. Trapped, they realized there was no escape from Maya's wrath. Neighbors heard terrible screams from the house, but no one dared to enter. Everyone in the village knew the truth. Justice had come, but not by human hands. When the last of the guilty disappeared, the house fell silent. Dust gathered, weeds grew around it, and the once lively home stood abandoned. But those who passed by at night swore they heard a woman's laughter echoing from inside. Some even claimed to see Maya's pale figure at the window, watching the road with cold, unblinking eyes. Her revenge was complete, but her spirit remained. The house of her killers had become her home forever, a place cursed by betrayal and blood. Maya had claimed her justice, and her story was never forgotten. And so, the house still stands, silent and dark, holding the screams of those who betrayed Maya. Her spirit never left, and her laughter still echoes through the walls. Some say the innocent rest in peace, but the betrayed never sleep. If you felt the chill of Maya's story, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. Darkness is always closer than you think, and the next story might be waiting for you.